Good evening, Michael. How are you?
Having dinner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll let you eat for the next 3 minutes.
Got home from work not long ago.
Hey, oh, let's see, we're recording, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Say-
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
now I can. Cool.
Good.
What are you eating?
Enchilada casserole.
Oh, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, Michael, Nathan,
Hey, Keith, how are you?
good, you?
Good.
With a bearded flannel shirt 3.
Yeah, right?
It's that time of year.
Geez,
It'll
where
be
is
this way
it?
till May, I think, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Next meeting, I'll have my hat on.
That and well, I guess you guys already got your beards well going. See
Yeah,
who
no,
else
it's
decides to grow a beard for the winter.
Yeah. Nathan's got the best one on the committee, I think.
don't shortchange yourself. I mean,
I was
You, you,
gonna-
you get like this humongous thing going. Ugh. Nathan, do you expect the person interested in the farm to be coming? I mean, the farm store?
I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I forgot about that email.
Yeah. I was gonna look it up. I don't have any idea about what like roulette for farm store stuff. No clue.
Yeah. It's yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get here, but okay, it being 7 o'clock and designating Tom Seifert as a full planning board member, I'll call this meeting of the Shutesbury Planning Board to order.
Ooh.
Note that the meeting is being recorded. And we have Mike Dick, Tom Seifert, Keith Hasty, and myself, Nathan Murphy, acting as chair. And that's it for now. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another few people trickle in. I'll give it just a minute. So I can have another bite of my enchilada casserole.
And Tom, what are you eating?
Squash and pork loin and rice pilaf.
That
Better
sounds
question,
good.
Tom, where's your flannel shirt?
Oh, I could go grab one, but yeah. What do you
It's the
call it?
uniform. It's the uniform.
Oh, I get it.
Let's see if Jeff's got one.
Oh.
No.
There we go.
Welcome, Jeff Weston.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you all.
Hey, Jeff.
Same here.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were just discussing that we all need to be wearing flannel shirts, Jeff. So next time, show up correctly.
Sorry. I don't think I own a flannel shirt. I'll have to go buy one at Goodwill or something.
You're kidding. How do you live in Shutesbury?
We'll have
I'm
to
just
go.
a Boston transplant. Don't tell anyone.
It's because you're down. It's because you're down the hill. It's
Please,
warmer down
please.
there.
Please.
Now, Steve showed up correctly.
Yeah,
You're right.
Steve
Yeah.
He's
got the memo.
beard and he's got the shirt.
Welcome, Steve Bressler.
Good evening.
Good evening. We are already in session. Just decided to hang out for a minute.
Uh,
Well, figured some people were trickling in, so.
So how's life in Shrewsbury?
It was a gorgeous day.
Finally getting rain that we needed.
I know.
Mm,
All right. So we are, I already called the meeting to order. I'll just note for, Jeff and Steve, the meeting is being recorded since he just got here, for whatever that's worth. Okay, anyone want to make a public comment? All right, so landowner education and guidance. I've got one on that. We got that, you may have seen an email from Randall P. Smith or Attorney Randall Smith, right? So he got a new copy of his Mylar plan. You know, the board endorsed it already. We got the check. I asked the land use clerk to do a little bit of legwork for us on this, and we've got a couple paper copies of the plan. So my suggestion was simply that I'll go and I'll meet with them in town hall and just lay the Mylar down over the paper plan we have and just verify visibly that it's the same plan. And if I don't see any discrepancies with the plan, I'll sign it on behalf of the board, and he can go on his merry way. You know, he's already paid, and so are there any? I'll let Ashley come on here. Hi, Ashley.
I got a question about that, just to clarify, Nathan, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
I'm just gonna note, Ashley Pycraft has joined the meeting. We now have a full, 7 members with Tom designated as associate member, filling in as a full member. Okay, so Ashley, just to catch you up, we were talking about in landowner education and guidance. You know, Randall Smith has had lost his Mylar copy and never recorded a plan with the Registry of Deeds, and this was an A&R plan that the board endorsed some time ago. You know, we've got the Form A, we got the payment, and it was deposited to the bank, all that stuff. So I was suggesting I can take the Mylar copy, meet with them in town hall. We've got paper copies, so I can lay it down and just validate that it's the same plan. And if it is, sign it. And Michael was about to ask a question at that point.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
looking at his email, I was trying to figure out the little saga that he described, and then I realized it was a ZBA. So I'm wondering, like, when they say the board approved it, was it the ZBA who approved it and not us? Because
No, I don't think he's talking about the ZBA. I think he's talking about the land use clerk.
no, he
Carrie
said the chair.
Marshall. He did.
Oh,
but-
oh,
I
okay.
mean,
So
yeah,
he said,
I mean, that part
Okay.
is, maybe I can fill him in when I
no,
need him.
if you're confident, that's fine. I was just like, I could only think
Yeah,
about.
no, you're right. That's, it doesn't, what was written in the email doesn't necessarily line up with, what was going on, but that's, kind of besides the point. If he's got the Mylar and it's, the exact same plan, then, we should be good to go. If it's different, I gotta say, I'm sorry, this is not the same plan that the board endorsed. The good thing is, we have the paper copies, right? So I can lay it down, it's a Mylar, I can lay it down right over the copies. And it should line up exactly, right? And I've got the signature on the copies, right? Signature and date, all that, right? So I can be like, no, this is not the one we endorsed, or yes, it is. Sign it, send him on his way, and we can finally put this all behind us. Anyway, that's so if there's no objections to that,
Oh.
that's what we'll do.
I'm good with it. I finished this. I
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
point.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, you just reminded me, it's mostly, I think, for us to put a, like an asterisk about, but I read in the paper last week, I can't remember what the project is, but um, Michael Pill is on the side of the party he's representing one of the parties. And it was about an A&R somewhere in a nearby town.
Okay.
And the A&R didn't get sent to the registry because it didn't have to get sent to the registry. It just had to get approved by the planning board. And what Michael was arguing for his client was that because it wasn't sent to the registry, it was about like combining two parcels and now they want to separate it or vice versa. I'm not sure which one it was, but the argument in the paper was since it wasn't the registry, that action never really happened because they couldn't find the minutes or something. So I just raise it because it's sort of like, I've always understood that certain things have to go to the registry and other things don't have to, but I'll try to find the article and send it to you. I totally forgot about it, but
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't have to go to the registry, but if you wanted to, if you want to take action based on that plan, like selling one of the lots or something, it has to go to the registry.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, if you're just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what.
Okay, so it's,
happened there.
so it's probably owner error in that situation, perhaps. But okay, that's cool. I just read about it. It piqued my interest, but I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't, it's endorsed. I would imagine that there's no expiration date on it. I mean, we don't impose one, and I don't think the law says anything about that. If the registry, has a qualm, if they say, oh, this is endorsed as of, because I'm gonna backdate it with the date of the original endorsement. Because that's when the board seems to make sense.
That's cool. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll move on. Now all right, so we got this, I've got the minutes for 9/8 on there. And I've got a little bit of a conundrum now because Mateo emailed me and he said that he's got a problem with the way we've been doing the minutes, which is, to summarize, somebody sends updates and he puts the updates in, and then it's not really clear who's making what updates and whatnot, and that the board should be privy to that or whatnot. So and then because I sent them updates to the minutes, and I see that the document was updated today, but not all my changes are in there. So if he made no changes, I was just going to share the document I have and be like, all right, well, this is the the draft that you've maybe seen, hopefully, and then I have my changes tracked so you can see what they are. But I don't know if I can't tell if he made any changes to it. Did anyone submit changes to? So no one submitted any changes. Okay. In that case, I mean, why don't I just share my copy of it and we can just go off that if no one made changes anyway. He may have gone in there and just touched it and it said that it was, touched today, but not actually made any physical changes based on anything any of you sent. So
I mean, I was in there like an hour ago in that doc in our shared drive, just checking it out. I didn't change anything, but
well, I don't think anyone besides Mateo has edit access. Maybe.
right. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, but
And frankly, I think it would be easier for us if we could just go in and make edits to the minutes.
we could certainly do the comment thing, or there's ways, I'm sure in docs where you can highlight it and it can be clear who did what. We also could do something as simple as each one of us choosing a font color or highlighting a certain different color when we do a comment, and then say, Ashley's red, Michael is yellow, Keith is green, whatever. It's a possibility. Sometimes students do that.
Yeah. I gotta do some experimenting with, Drive to kind of see what, the versioning capability is, but, I mean, I feel like when you have full access to the document, you can see the changes other people make, like in real time. So, that would be fine. There's been open meeting law issues with minutes. And I haven't fully researched that. I started to look at it at one point, and the example that stood out to me was not what we're talking about doing. It was, they were making edits to the minutes, but then, one of the board members of this particular public body started, going off about the process around the minutes and getting off of like what is going in the minutes and onto a broader topic that needed to be in an open meeting to be discussed and not be a deliberation, right? So, but that being said, I don't feel confident enough to just say, we should do that without any fear of open meeting law issues. I mean, I don't see it as like I don't think there's any ill intent in it. We're just trying to, give ourselves the ability to easily make the updates. We're going to bring it up on a screen and approve it. But it's obviously we don't want to get ourselves in trouble with that. So I
Nathan,
don't know
can I
if someone wants to, what's up?
I was gonna share two things. One, just historically. So I think it was like 2008, the AG updated the open meeting laws, like a whole big, it hadn't been done in a while. I remember going to a presentation up in Turner's, and they were doing a whole state tour where they were like
Mhm.
talking to people, and this one, a woman from, I don't know, Conway, like some other small town, basically said, this is how we do it. We have someone takes the minutes and we all send in our comments to that person and they make the changes and then we discuss it. And this lawyer from the AG office was like, oh no, you can't do that, but he clearly does not have to do minutes, so like you can't do it in the meeting because that eats up all the time. I think what you're discussing seems like it makes sense in the sense that like what needs to happen is we as a body have to discuss / deliberate about the changes and then agree and then have that conversation before we approve them. But we can write them beforehand. I mean, it seems there's some level of practicality.
I would imagine so. I mean,
Yeah.
The question is, in terms of making it like kind of more transparent, obviously Word has the tracking changes function, but it's um that doesn't translate into, when it's on the Google Drive per se, right? You might have to like download it and then upload it to get that in there, or we might have to do fonts like Ashley said, but we can, we'll do a little bit more research. So I'm gonna share this. Do we want to have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of September 8th, 2025.
All right, Michael moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you. Now we'll have a discussion. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to change the view. Okay. So here I just, kind of like email sent to the planning board, and I added the section 3.1-1 of the zoning bylaw. Here under Michael's review of board discussion, I added word about data centers, including water and electricity uses. I added noise, lighting, security, and backup diesel generation. Pretty sure that was on the transcript. So that's just kind of, doing that. So here was a kind of a comment from Jeff, and to see what was originally there, you see it says, Weston points out the precarity of residents' water supply because they're dependent on well water, and notes that even modest data centers require 500,000 gallons of water per day. So I took issue with that. He didn't say anything about a modest data center requiring 500,000 gallons of water a day. I'm not sure where that came from. You know, kind of rewriting, Weston recalled recent incidents of private wells failing in Shutesbury during periods of low rain, and recalled an example of a data center requiring 500,000 gallons of water per day, and citing concerns about water use at any scale, expressed his reluctance to vote for one. He supports a moratorium.
Well said. Thank you.
Great, good. Okay. I added on the part where Arlene Reed spoke, I just noted that, the chair asked if Reed had a source to share regarding contaminants in discharge water. Reed indicated that she had not, but that she was interested in exploring the question with the planning board. And here, so this was kind of, I'll read the original and then I'll read what I put. So it says, Murphy agrees that a moratorium makes sense for the reasons expressed today, but that a full prohibition would be premature. He recalls that the board also considered the question of whether a data center would fall under the category of light industry as described in the bylaw, and notes that the board decided it was not clear if it would. He explains that this is why the board felt it was important to include a definition in the bylaw. He reviews what he thinks would happen if the town adopts a moratorium and the prohibition, as well as what could happen if the town adopted a moratorium but no prohibition. His inclination is to commit to bringing an amendment to the next annual town meeting, and that the data centers be allowed by special permit in certain districts. The board could then use the moratorium to determine how it would want to regulate such facilities while sending a signal to industry that the town is open to certain data centers that would be a good fit for Shutesbury and could generate revenue for the town, as well as possibly lower residents' internet costs. He suggests the board allow data centers of a smaller size following the moratorium. He has that a data center could also possibly create some jobs. And, just kind of background on the update is just, having gone, done some back and forth, working on the report to town meeting, I ended up doing this, trying to distill it in a different way. So here's what I wrote. Murphy stated that he agrees that a moratorium makes sense to give the board time to figure out regulations, but only if data centers are not prohibited at the same time. He provides background on the formation of the proposed amendment, including concerns about determining whether a data center might be characterized as an allowable use under the existing definition of light industry currently in the zoning bylaw, and the revelation after speaking with town council that any amendment to the use table could not be part of the moratorium. He voiced concerns that prohibiting data centers in the use table could lead to outright prohibition if the proposed amendment passes and no subsequent action is taken afterwards. His inclination is that allowing data centers by special permit shows commitment to come back with comprehensive regulation at the next town meeting and sends the right signal to industry that the town is open to certain data centers that would be a good fit for Shutesbury. It is possible an acceptable project could generate revenue for the town as well as the municipal light plant, possibly lowering residents' internet costs. He adds that in addition to allowing by special permit, he would like the amendment to include a size limitation in order to avoid giving the impression that a large project would be allowed. He also cites the creation of new jobs as a benefit of a data center project. And that's it. That's all I have. So does anyone have any issues or want to look at anything again?
That sounds fine by me.
Great. Okay, then, if that's the case, then I will call the roll. De Chiara,
Aye.
Hasty,
Aye.
Bressler,
Aye.
Seifert,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Motion carries unanimously, and the minutes from September 8th, 2025, planning board meeting are approved. All right, beautiful.
Can I make a quick comment, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Just to address, I think what some of the concerns were about editing minutes or sending comments about minutes. Just reading something from Sudbury, Massachusetts, which was a technology guidance for boards and committees in March of 2021. And I know I've read things of this nature before, but one of their, like, it's kind of like an FQA sheet or FAQ sheet. If documents in the shared drive are updated in any way between meetings, would that be perceived as an open meeting law violation? And the answer is see above. If these updates are viewed by a quorum, the Division of Open Government would most likely find a violation as edits or comments are considered to be opinions of the members. So I just feel as though in the research I've done on this question, it's very risky even to share edits of minutes outside of an open session if a quorum of the group is able to see those edits. So I don't know the answer. I wished we had our session with, I think, KP Law, or somebody was going to give the town a session about a month or two ago. And I think it's possibly still a gray area even, but.
Yeah, I think that's why I think, thanks, Tom. I mean, I do agree about it's deliberation if a quorum seeing it. I mean, I think the way we're doing it now, where we just send it blind to Mateo, who's a staff person, and therefore doesn't contribute to the quorum. If we're sending it to him and he makes the edits and then reflects it back and says, this is what I heard from you, no one's deliberating amongst ourselves. We're just sending him input, and then he delivers sort of this prepackaged thing that we can then discuss in open meeting. Like, that's how I thought it worked well. So it'd be interesting to know what Mateo didn't think was working about that.
I don't know if maybe he, was taken aback by some of my changes, or if he just was like having concerns about, whatever his interpretation of how to summarize it was, and then versus somebody else's, and getting maybe updates and either putting them in verbatim, or maybe, I don't know if he would ever like, oh, here's the update, and like do some kind of like compromise or whatever. Like if somebody said something that was, in his opinion, objectively like slightly, I don't know exactly what was going on with it. So we'll talk about more when he's here, to kind of fill us in. But I think, his concern was just that, changes from the draft ought to be, visible to the board and like approving them. In the case of like one of the board members going through and making a bunch of changes to what he had done as a draft, and like that should be, oh yeah, Nate went in and did all these changes. Don't just blindly approve it. Make it look close at it. Nate's in there making edits. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it. I mean, and that's fair. I mean, I agree with it. But obviously it's tricky. I mean, to Tom's point, I think, I mean, I would be inclined to rely more on, if we can look at the decisions and where they came down on decisions. That's kind of like, that's, the guidance of the FAQs, that's a little bit, kind of like, oh yeah, they would likely, do this. And here it's like, when it's explicitly laid out in a decision that's out there, it's like, okay, that's very concrete. So that's why I would like to see if anyone is interested in doing some research on that, but we'll you know, we'll see what we can do. You know, we'll talk to Mateo too and see if we can figure out what's gonna go on. All right, okay. Special town meeting recap. So the warrant article passed. You know, we've got a it's apparently going off to the Attorney General, we hope. I know that there's an interim town clerk, so I'm not sure. I know that Mateo said he was going to work with them to do what was needed to get all that in order. Obviously, you know, Michael, I asked Michael to present that, which, you know, I would have done regardless of any, you know, but that's, you know, fine. You know, so Michael presented the warrant article on behalf of the majority, and despite my request, I was not given the opportunity to present the town meeting as the minority at special town meeting, but I did speak as a resident, and what was that? I forget what it was. I think it might have been like 48-16. Was that about right, Michael?
I don't remember.
So I got a quick question. You said, Nathan, and I didn't realize this, that you spoke as a private individual. Couldn't you have spoken at town meeting as a dissenting member of the planning board?
I would imagine so, yeah. You
I
know,
mean, I
and-
think that's perfectly legitimate, you know,
And I actually, I meant to, you know, forward some emails along and,
Yeah,
but,
what I had said to Nathan, and I think he probably heard this from Donna or the moderator, but I mean, if I look at like FinCom, because that's where it happens most
Right.
regularly,
right.
is they always go to the microphone as the floor. So it's like there's up front is the body saying this is what we're doing, this is what we're recommending, assuming that there's a majority representation. And then people who object, who are on the committee, are allowed to object, but they just do it from the floor.
Right.
I don't think Bob Groves ever says I'm not on the FinCom, but he can't do it from up front. I think is just the deal.
No, but I think to your point, Michael, Bob does do it seated at the FinCom table. You know, he'll express his views why he doesn't agree.
I don't know if he does.
I've never seen him get up in front of the mic, but I've seen him talk from the table.
I have seen him get up in front of the mic, but I do know that I remember, you know, at least once, one of the town meetings we had back behind town hall under the tent, the moderator said, you know, I'd like to hear from, you know, the majority view. It was one of the, you know, finance articles, and he spoke to it. And, you know, getting into the weeds of it, right? There's the enabling bylaw for the finance committee talks about this. And I actually spoke with Bob Groves about it, and the connection on the phone was a little bit bad, so I kind of had to piece a little bit of it together. I feel like there was at least one or maybe a couple times where like he spoke from the table or was asked to speak like as the minority. And then I think that there was a little bit of friction about the whole thing on the committee. You know, I think, you know, obviously he was frequently opposing a lot of their things, and, you know, and what it is the bylaw that provides for the minority report for the FinCom. It kind of stipulates that it needs to be posted, and so the minority needs to like follow that, go through that same process. And I think at some point, you know, Bob Groves found it easier to just go up and address the moderator like a resident. He said, I'm just going to do that. It's all the same to me, right? And that's what he did moving forward, right? So, you know, that's, I think, kind of how that went down. And I think it was probably just a couple of times he did address the meeting, like face the audience. But then after that, probably, and there may have, you know, I'm sure there's also sometimes a lot of times when there's kind of back and forth, they just stay there at the table and they pass the mic around, which I think is also a little different because it's the FinCom and they're just up there and you know what I mean? So I think sometimes maybe it gets a little wishy-washy too, but the impression that was given was that we might need a bylaw that would provide for the minority to be able to present. And I'm happy to do that. That would be a general bylaw, but I don't. I'm skeptical of that call. But I don't know enough about it to give a strong opinion one way or the other. We'll probably talk about this more, but I'm glad to hear that, from you, Steve, that, you find that the minority should, be able to talk up there. I mean, personally, I think it's important to, this is the first time I think, at least since I've been on the planning board, that we've had a warrant article that wasn't unanimously supported, right? And when we're in that situation, I think, it behooves us to let the minority speak. And in this case, it's me, and I would certainly want the same to be if it was any of you. And you had differing opinions from what the majority was. I mean, I think that's important for the town meeting, and whether you do it, facing the audience. I mean, I think it's important to put it on the same standing. When it's a municipal body that's putting a warrant article forward, right? Is there anyone that?
The only place, Nathan, that, as I said to you in an email, where I disagreed is putting it in print. Because I've never seen a planning board member put in print on the warrant the objections. And that gives it undue weight. And as I said to you, I feel like that undermines the majority vote of the planning board. But by the same token, you have every right in the meeting, in the town meeting, to express your opinion, even as the chair of the planning board, my feeling, let alone a private citizen.
I'm gonna thank you for that, Steve. I'm gonna note also that we're kind of, blending into review of town meeting and also talking now we're at minority opinions and on proposed warrant articles. We're kind of seamlessly going right into
Okay.
one to the other.
Okay.
Just kind of say that out loud so it'll be in the transcript for Mateo when he's doing minutes. I would disagree with that. I think like that's when you look at courts, if there's a dissenting opinion, they write it up and they put it in the opinion. And it's the same thing.
Well, where I'm coming from is I've never seen it done by the planning board member, a
No,
dissenting
that's
planning
fair.
board, and especially one who's the chair, who has an undue advantage in writing up the warrant. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Well, and obviously it's funny because it's we had we voted on the article right after the hearing, and then we're not meeting again between then and town meeting, right? So it's that part's funny. That's that makes it a little tougher to swallow, and I understand that. And I'm willing to take the heat for that. I think I would think it would be a good practice. But let me ask you a question, Steve. Do you recall a time when there was a split vote on a warrant article?
No, not from the planning board. There might have been a dissenting vote, but and I might feel differently if it was split like 4-3, or you know what I mean, where it was much closer. And but given the nature of the discussion and the length of the discussion that we had as a planning board, it just felt putting it on the warrant for one person's opinion gave it to, and again, I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, gave it
Oh, sorry.
undue weight. However, I fully support anybody dissenting vote on the planning board getting up and speaking in town meeting like you did.
Keith.
So I think, when we're at town meeting, a lot of people are going into these things pretty naive. They haven't read the warrants. They don't know the details. So it seems to me giving the public, the voters, more information on how, yeah, I guess having the dissenting opinion or opinions, I could see there being 3 different dissenting opinions for 3 different reasons.
Right.
But giving the public, albeit short amount of time to see the thinking of the individuals, is a good thing. Because there have been times throughout human history when the majority has been wrong. And it's been that single voice that's been right. So I've got no problem with even a single individual who dissents, putting their rationale in. Again, oh yeah, go ahead. That's it.
No, finish.
No, I don't think whether or not it was the chair or any one of us. I think whoever the dissenting person is should write their own rationale. In this case, it just happened to be Nathan. But I mean, if we all agree that the dissenters get to at least articulate what their thinking is for the voters to see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, just generally speaking, I sort of support the idea of figuring out the rules is ahead of time, because it's nicer to have the rules laid out so that when you get into something that's bumpy and heated and there's friction, you're not debating it then. That's like the worst time to figure it out, which is sort of,
Yeah.
what happened. So I think a combination of doing the research and figuring out, and I'm not sure where I come down. I usually hate just doing something because of tradition, because it should be based in something more than tradition. Tradition tends to be, often wrong. But we should do the research to find out, like, what are the options? What can we do in writing in terms of, you need a committee report. But in terms of the other opinions, how can that show up? And then also in terms of the oral presentation at town meeting, what are the parameters? So if we can do the research and then we can come up with, a bylaw, like, I think this is the other part, like, if it's a general bylaw, it probably would apply to all the committees in town. And so that's like we could offer it up, but,
Yeah.
it seems like if it's good enough for us, it might be good enough for everybody else. And then it
No,
might be,
yeah, I mean, actually, I would like that, yeah.
and then it might be getting the select board involved, which is getting a bigger to do, but I think it'd be worth doing and getting it ready for annual town meeting, because if we start having if we know what the rules of the road are in terms of options, then we can have a conversation about which options we think we would propose. So it's worth a discussion.
Well, I will admit, I am curious if there's I mean, there's got to be a planning board somewhere in the state that came into this situation besides us. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this, actually. I want to move on. So I think, doing more research, we can talk about it again. And at the very least, the next time we go to town meeting, and if there's a dissent, we'll make sure that we will be specific in a motion we might make so that it can be clear and we're not trying to figure it out, because Michael's right, that is not fun. So that's, I think, we'll at the very least do that, and if we can get, a bylaw or, I mean, some of this could be like regulations too, which, on a side, I think, one day it would be good to do some regulations for the board. But that's, we've got lots of stuff, so. All right, unless anyone has anything else to say, I'd like to move on to the next item. All right. Board of Health coordination with PB. I had intended to reach out to them, and I just didn't get to it, unfortunately. But they're meeting right now, reviewing some of that stuff. And I think
They are interested, like in particular, like around data center stuff, because that town meeting, I chatted with Arlene a little bit, and it was mostly it's carried over from like clean energy stuff, of which they're talking, they're talking to statewide boards, and so we were talking about water, and I think they, it only makes sense to do. So I think they are interested, but it was sort of an informal conversation, nothing formal put in place.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, they suggested a joint meeting. I assume people are open to it, joint meeting, review, what have you. So I'll just reach out, tell them that in not so many words, and see what they want to do. Sounds good, right? Okay. All right, so we have now the data center bylaw discussion. So go ahead, Michael, take it away.
Sure. So I just assumed I would start this because, like like everything else, you need someplace to comment from. So I'm not attached to any of it, but I'll just walk you through the. Actually, here, let me share it. It'd be easier that way. Oh, huh. Nathan, you got to let me share. For some reason, it's not
Oh.
letting me do it.
Oh, hold on.
That's
It gave me
unusual.
it gave me a pop-up and I said allow.
Okay, cool. Okay, so just make it bigger. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
So I did my usual color coding, which hopefully is somewhat helpful. So the screen up here is just sort of placeholder language for when we get to the warrant article. Based on what we discussed, we all agreed that we were going to revisit the use table. So that's basically what these question marks are. The thing that I think I would share that I realized in doing this is that the definitions are actually really key to the regulation and how we design it. And so the black that we have here about the data center is what we had going into the special town meeting. And then the screen here, the alternative was, I ended up looking up what the state says, and this is the definition the state has. So it's close, but not exactly the same. So, it's not that we have to use theirs, but just for information's sake. But I think the more interesting part for me to sort of like kick off how we're thinking about this, so last time we talked about the difference in size, and we were talking about scalability, and there's a difference between big ones and small ones, et cetera. We also talked about, there's ones that are cooled with water, there's ones that are cooled with air. And so those things might be different in terms of influence the regulation. So what I did, and then we also had the conversation about the elementary school and Shutesbury Net could likely be data centers. So there's sort of three categories of definition that I wanted to throw out. I only did work on the first one because it came to me and I wrote it down. But the first one is differentiating a public data center, which is basically for the public good and interest of people in Shutesbury, primarily, but not exclusively, the school and the MLP. And then a commercial is everything else. So that was sort of like one differentiator. The other two differentiators that, the other main differentiator was the size. So we talked about small, we talked about medium, whatever medium is, and we talked about large. So some of the questions, we could do both, right? I mean, I was just looking at the draft DOER bylaws for solar and energy storage, and they have this whole matrix of like size and type. So I personally felt looking at theirs that it was a little too complex. It's sort of like a 3D matrix, but I think those are things we should discuss. Like, do we want to regulate based on big, small, and medium? Do we want to regulate by private or not? I also thought that in terms of the type, so like water cooled versus air cooled, that can come in the body. I don't think we have to sort of determine it in the use table, but we could define it. So then what I ended up doing, which is a lot of the blue here, is I looked at the solar bylaw, just because, that's probably one of the more robust sections we have, and figured out, and it's really the only other industrial section we have, what would carry over. And so I looked at it, and some of these are just agnostic of whether it's a data center or solar or some other kind of industrial thing. So applicability, it basically says what's applicable to this bylaw. So we could decide, for example, that small are by right in the use table, and they're not applicable by this thing. Or it could say everything's applicable. So like we have those options. That's what that is. I put in the general requirements that we had in terms of basically it has to be applicable with all local, state, and federal requirements. We just in the solar bylaw called out some that we thought were important, like MEPA, and the wetlands regulations, etc. I think a big topic will be dimensional requirements, either lot size or setbacks. And a lot of these have energy storage. So if it's energy storage, are there different dimensions or is it the same? Doesn't it matter? And then I just put this in here as something to consider. I really tried not to put too much like actual answers in, but it seemed like we probably don't want to create a data center alley. So making it so that you couldn't have a data center on a parcel that's contiguous where there's another data center. That was just sort of my personal assumption, but we can scratch that. And then I carried over a lot of the mitigation things from the solar bylaw. So forest health and habitat, perimeter fencing, trail networks, historical and cultural properties, stormwater management, noise, road integrity, which is the unpaved roads, and then performance standards. So lighting, signage, vegetation, visual impacts, utility connections, access driveways, and then there's environmental standards. So emergency services. And I think this is probably more if there's energy storage, but depending on our research, maybe there's something, since it's all electrical, it has to be this as well. Land clearing and erosion, habitat impacts, wetlands, water protection, energy storage, and then required documents. So what it has to submit. So I basically went through is noticing there's special permit submission. So it's maybe the right size, maybe bigger. It depends on what we want to do. I think the other thing I realized, and it's worth sort of throwing out, there's probably some stuff that's in the solar bylaw that we would want to just sort of have show up for any industrial use. And normally in regulations, what you end up doing is, and we do it here, it's like, you reference 8.3 point whatever, so you don't have to write it up all the time. And if that changes, it's still valid. So it seems like there's things that we could do about, say, stormwater management or trail protection or noticing that should be true for every industrial use that we allow in town. But that's a heavy lift because we'd have to create those sections. And I don't know if we're up for doing that right now, but I think ultimately that might be something like if like we have solar, we have energy storage, we have data center, who knows what the next industrial thing is? Like if we keep doing this, we'll keep creating these big, bulky sections where we can probably make them a little bit more efficient if we can refer to refer to stormwater management, refer to lighting, refer to, trails. And then these things get skinnier and more specific to the project. So I think that's a better way to design it, but I don't know if we want to take that on at the same time we're doing this. So that's sort of the big thing. I don't know, Nathan, where you want to go. I mean, I do think part of me feels like the definitions are the starting point for the regulation. like the big or small, the public or not public, the water versus air. Because some of these other things, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's water or air, we still want to protect, say, stormwater, and we still want to make sure that lighting is the same. So that's my initial kickoff. Does that all make sense?
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
Michael, thank you for all of your incredible work and research and passion to get it right. Thank you.
Sure. I haven't done too much research yet, but I think it's been a collective research effort so far. But
So
thanks, Phil.
Michael, you know, I'm right there with you as far as duplicating language that's elsewhere. Doesn't like under chapter 9 or section 9 for the special permits, aren't most of those provisions, because there's a bunch of stuff in there about all these things about well, you know, everything you just named pretty much. And then and we even have a separate section for lighting and a separate section for signs. So a lot of this stuff we kind of already, and again, I haven't gone through and cross-checked everything, but there's a lot of stuff already in our bylaw that seems like we can incorporate by reference if need be.
It'd be interesting to see. I mean, I definitely take your point. I mean, I think you're referring to the special permit criteria that we developed like a couple
Yeah,
years
right.
ago. Yeah.
Right.
And so that was intended more generally, like it should apply to everything, but I think it was clearly influenced by the solar discussion and realizing that it wasn't what we had before was not as protective or comprehensive as we wanted. It would be interesting to sort of crosswalk those. I think I'll just tell you what my thought is, like neatening it up, so to speak, and sort of create freestanding things that can be referenced. I would want to do that, but not do it with solar because I don't want to open up solar. Like there's, although I should actually, hey Nathan, can I do like a 2-second digression?
Sure.
Sure. So I don't know if you all know, but I've been like up to my eyebrows, maybe beyond, in terms of dealing with clean energy regulations for the state. So the clean energy law got passed in November 2024, so almost a year ago. And in the last month, all the state agencies that are tasked with doing the regulations to make these things happen put out regulations. So there's DOER, which is in charge of the quote unquote small projects that we'll continue to regulate. So they basically say, here's the rules of the road. You have to follow them, but you guys get to regulate them. And there's a concept of a consolidated permit. So the whole big innovation at the state is that municipalities will have 12 months to come up with a decision about a permit. And it has to be all the permitting from a local perspective. So it would be us, it would be the Board of Health, it would be Concom, if ZBA was involved, whatever. We'd all have to agree in 12 months, which is crazy because if we don't do that, then it's constructive approval. But the thing I just wanted to mention is a heads up. There was a hearing that Keith and Jeff and I went to with DOER like 2 weeks ago. And one of the questions that came out of it, is a concept of concurrency. So by law, the new regulations of the state go in effect on March 1st. So a few months from now. And then there'll be a period where municipalities like us who have solar bylaws can keep working with them. But at some point we have to switch to whatever DOER is requiring. And so there's like an overlap period and then there's a drop dead period. So they were suggesting December of 2026 for the drop dead when we have to switch over. When I'll actually share this with you, but when I thought it through, June 30th, 2027 made sense to me. But at some point, the state's going to say, this is the regulations and this is the period of concurrency. And we're going to have to revisit our solar bylaws anyway to make sure that they're compliant. So that'll, it's, depending on what they say, it'll either be later this year or next year, is sort of where I was getting to. So not to get down that track, but I was sort of realizing that in some regards, I don't want to open the solar discussion prematurely, but we're going to have to open the solar discussion relatively soon anyway. We just don't know what it'll look like yet.
Hey, what's the, it doesn't matter the size on that?
Yes. So everything, for the definition of small clean energy, which is what we would continue to regulate, it's got to be 25 megawatt or less for wind and solar and 100 megawatt or less for energy storage. And then everything else above those goes to the Energy Facility Siting Board. So there are no 25 megawatt projects in Massachusetts currently. So basically everything that's out there would just stay within the realm. It's just that we would have to follow the regulations that the state's putting forth. And the 12
Okay,
months-
so even, it doesn't go to the siting board, but we have to follow the regulations and whatever their model bylaw is essentially.
Yeah, the model by, well,
Is there another layer like, less than 25 megawatts, like greater than, 5 megawatts or 2 megawatts or something? Or is that like, I mean, what about
No.
like a roof?
well,
like this-
that all comes under the DOR regs. So if it's really small, like I think it was just 2 days ago, the Green Communities folks at DOR got tasked with doing the model bylaw for solar and for energy storage. It's a little confusing because on the one hand, I'll just say this, 'cause on the one hand,
we don't have to get too far. I was just wondering if, I was
Yeah.
trying to, understand better, and if, we don't need to dwell on it. I think we should,
yeah,
cut this off
it'll be a project soon.
okay. So where are we on, back to data centers?
So I have a suggestion just to kick things off. You
Okay,
know, as far as size, there are I've done a little bit of research, not exhaustive, but a little bit to be dangerous. So I forewarn you all. Size,
Mm.
there's micro, small, and hyper. Small is considered up to 5,000 square foot. I'm sorry, micro is up to 5,000 square foot. Small is 5,000 to 20,000. And I'm not even going to go into hyper because Shutesbury, it would be out of scale for Shutesbury. That's size. And then there's types, okay? And you mentioned this in a previous meeting, Nathan. There's edge data centers, which are really small local ones, like the school has, okay? That
Right.
are near the place of business or the place of operation. They're not feeding data out into the world like a micro data center would be. So there's a distinction between size and type. There's the 3 sizes, and edge seems to me in reading to be the most appropriate one. So where I'm going, and then of course I'll be real brief. There, as Michael said, there's air cooled, there's water cooled, and then there's liquid cooled. Okay, recycled liquid cooled. And the last thing I'll say is data centers, even micro ones, which is up to 5,000 square foot, can have, ESS systems, or they can have a backup generator with local UPS units. In other words, the UPS units for a data center, a micro data center, keep it going for a few minutes until the generator kicks in. And so we could choose not to do ESS and to require a generator backup. So those are just some options to consider. And I think for me, the scale is the biggest issue. And then water usage second, because we don't have water. Okay. And I think if there are other technologies that are other ways of cooling, such as air, such as a liquid that's not containing PFAS, we can require that. And not have them use water at all.
And Steve, just because you mentioned PFAS, from the research I did a little bit is that for the air cooled, those often involve PFAS as part of the cooling agent. Is that right?
That's correct. And but for the liquid cooled, there's a couple of approaches. One of them is non-toxic. It's essentially mineral oil, something that has the viscosity of mineral oil, and it's a thermal insulator, meaning it could surround these servers and insulate them from each other. If that makes sense to you all. So again, I'm laying this out there because there are things that we can say, yeah, you can do this, this, and this, but we're not allowing X, Y, and Z, water, any water usage or any backup battery storage system for the reasons that Jeff has articulated on several occasions. So that's like a starting point, guys.
You know, I would really like to talk to, somebody that is on the data center development side and just kind of get an idea of, what even, harebrained idea would ever result in a data center being proposed here in the first place, and see, is it something that is, you might as well call it a foregone conclusion. It's never going to happen on account of, the hilly terrain and the high electricity costs and the location, or like maybe, would there ever be, or I don't know,
Are you saying, Nathan, would anybody ever be crazy enough to put a data center in Shutesbury? Is that what you're asking?
right. I mean, kind of like, just kind of getting a little bit of perspective on it from that end. Obviously it's not going to, everyone's going to have their own concerns on this thing, but that could be useful. Keith.
So we're back to scale, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
a technology that I don't think any of us really know that much about. And technology is changing so quickly. I don't know how anybody can keep up with it. Who knows what's around the corner? It comes back to the scale thing. What are we concerned about? We're concerned about a big mega structure in Shutesbury. So we could put limits on a square footage limit and a height limit. I think we've already got height restrictions on dwellings, right? Or multifamily dwellings.
Yeah,
So we
we've
could
got
make a height restriction and a square footage restriction,
we've got that already.
irregardless of what's inside the building, because who knows,
Right.
who's it going to serve? I don't know. I don't, again, this stuff is crazy. And the cooling, I think that, this whole issue of the water cooling, which I don't, I get the feeling a lot of the concerns with when people say they use this many gallons of water per day. And to me, that implies throughput, that they're drawing water from somewhere, cooling it, and then they're discharging it somewhere. And again, I don't think our geology here is conducive to doing that on a big scale. And God knows what kind of permits you have to get to pump groundwater for cooling and then just discharge it somewhere else. We don't have any creeks big enough to really serve as a water supply for any kind of facility that they're going to suck water out of any of our streams. So that leaves, if it's going to be liquid cooling, to me, it's going to be like a heat pump, like a ground source heat pump, where they're going to drill a well and then circulate whatever fluid is their cooling medium up and down an enclosed system. Maybe that's acceptable. I don't know, depending on what the vehicle is, if it's a non-toxic glycol that other systems.
Keith, as I said, they have something equivalent to mineral oil.
Yeah, right. Well, I think the mineral oil stuff, I think, is actually in contact with the electronics. Like, I think they actually submerge these processors.
That's correct. It's immersion.
Yeah.
You're right. It's called immersion cooling.
Yeah. And again, that's why I don't care what they're doing inside the building as long as it's contained.
Right.
And
agreed.
That no issues. you know, if there's an accident, that it's not gonna end up outside the building on the ground, whatever it is they're using.
Or,
So
if it does end up, for example, if the building cracks or something, it does end up out in the ground, it's not toxic in nature.
Yeah, sure. And you know, we can, and that's why what I'm thinking is that we should perhaps be a little bit less specific on some of this stuff, because we don't know what the technologies are. Show us what your design is, show us what you're using, what your chemicals are, and we can think on it on a case-by-case basis. The scale, again, I think we should put scale, again, height, square footage. I think that's an easy one, a no-brainer, because that's really what jumps out at me with some of these things. And then the internals, again, because the technology changes so fast, tell us, like any other activity, what are you using? How much of it? Are you going to use our resources? Are you going to use our water? I'm less concerned about the battery storage. And again, there's lead acid batteries for something like this. The reason these lithium ion batteries are used for ESS is because they can cycle them up and down thousands of times. Lead acid batteries are a little bit more temperamental, but lead acid batteries have been used for 120 years. And all the telephone exchanges had banks of lead acid batteries with no issue. So if they wanted to have their backup as being lead acid batteries, would we have a concern with that? So just a blanket saying no battery storage, I guess, is where I would kind of be reluctant to make stipulations like that. So again, I guess I'm arguing more for being a little bit more general, and almost to the point of, I think our existing bylaw special permit criteria gives us a lot of review room for what somebody would come to town with potentially. Again, I don't think it's very likely.
I just have one point of clarification. And I totally appreciate the conversation. Nathan, just going back to your point about like, would someone be crazy enough to want to do this? You're not, I mean, are you, I feel like we have to write something to address this, even if it's unlikely. Like doing nothing seems like it's irresponsible, but I'm curious, like, are you thinking we should do something and figure out what we want to do? Or are you thinking that it's so unlikely that we shouldn't bother?
Oh, the thought crossed my mind. You know, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of just, you know, curious as to, you know, if, you know, what kind of feasibility there is there. You know, I mean, it's, you know, on one hand, it's just kind of like the pure and simple, like, all right, you know, we want to regulate this. How about we regulate it? You know, I mean, I'm obviously, you know, somewhat economically development minded. So there is an interest in that, although I don't, you know, I'm not optimistic at the prospects of a data center, but I mean, perhaps like maybe for UMass or something like that, some sort of you know, edge micro facility could work, but I mean, it seems like a real long shot. And other than that, I don't know what kind of impetus. You know, I mean, I think to get a data center here, we'd have to put out a request for proposal and subsidize it or something. You know, like it seems impossible. And I mean, you know, my thinking could be totally incorrect on this, but I mean, that's part of the reason to kind of, you know, get more information from that. I mean, it may or may not really influence what the board wants to put into a bylaw, but it might, you know, it might be, I can't imagine it wouldn't be somewhat informative for the discussion, right? I'm also interested in kind of maybe looking at, I don't know, maybe like Lowell's bylaw or, you know, some cities or towns that do have industry and looking at what their processes are around it. And like what kind of documents and plans are they requiring and what kind of standards do they have for those? Like that could be useful, I think.
Yeah.
That's more research.
Yeah, I did look briefly to see like if there's any municipalities in Massachusetts that have data center bylaws.
Right.
unlike other things, there's a dearth of them. I don't actually think I saw anything that was written up, and like Virginia is, the leading edge in this stuff. I didn't go and looking at Virginia yet, but
I don't think we should look at anywhere out of state because it's, municipality is a creature of the state law, so.
Well,
But-
and to be honest with you, I'm worried about cribbing off of other towns in mass bylaws, because doesn't mean they get it right either. So I think we should
Well,
think
no.
on our own.
No, but there are, I mean, I'm more specifically, thinking of like, larger municipalities or cities that have, some some of it's legacy industry, right? And that's not as useful, but maybe some places where they've recently built some stuff. And yeah, you're not going to find a data center bylaw, but they have it more general, right? It's like industry or commercial, what have you. And they have zoning districts for it, right? It's not like, oh, we're going to stick it in forest conservation. It's a different scenario, but where I think it could be useful is, I mean, obviously they need to go through the details and on a lot of that stuff. So I mean, I don't know, it might be good, especially if you can find something where it's like maybe maybe not something Metro Boston, but maybe something where there are some aquifer concerns or things like that, where they're like looking at they go through stuff thoroughly. I don't know. I mean, that's just something like, off the top of my head, I find could be useful.
I think from my read, I think micro data centers, 5,000 square foot or less, are commercially viable, meaning somebody could make money off of them. And
Yeah.
they could be placed anywhere. And 5,000 square foot in Shutesbury may not be a bad thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds reasonable. I mean, bigger than that, I mean, bigger than 5,000 square foot seems like pretty big.
Right. It's a, yeah,
Right?
it would be pretty big. And, we could just, I think in Michael, in your, what do you call it, in the bylaw gathering that you did, you had something about setbacks and, noise from, they do make, these centers do, even
Mhm.
5,000 square foot
Oh, yeah.
micro centers
yeah.
make noise. And so we'd want to make sure they weren't near resident, homes, for example.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I would say no water cool and no PFAS air cool. We do have enough information to come up with some very basic, some basic things that fit for Shutesbury, that if somebody could meet, they can have a data center.
I did want to say in terms of size, I think the library is 4,950 feet, something like that, because if it was over 5,000, it would need a water sprinkler system. So they
Right.
built it just under 5,000 feet.
Yeah, because that would have added another $1 million to the.
Who knows how much, but they built it on just under 5,000.
Hey,
No,
that's
I
a pretty,
do know how much because Penny told me, and she's
that's
on
a
the
pretty
building.
indiscreet building. I mean, when you think about it, I would never have guessed that was 4,000 square feet
Yeah.
from driving by.
4,950, I think, something like that.
Well, that's, again,
yeah, I mean,
It was originally over 5,000 square feet, right? And then they're like, uh-oh.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, so we've got this, we've all got a lot of ideas, like, we can roll it around. We've obviously got time. If anyone wants to go out and do some research, I encourage it.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to someone, whatever. I might get around to that, might not. I don't have a good track record with that. I tend to, get over the meeting, and it's, I don't know, it's a challenge, obviously, I think, for everyone, right? To do this stuff, but,
well, is everyone good with me sort of taking this stuff and reworking it? And, I'll throw it out so we can discuss next meeting. I'm happy to sort of do the usual. And I mean, we're in October, so we got some time to refine it for sure. And if you do research, just send stuff to me, because I mean, there's a high likelihood we might be one of the first municipalities developing a bylaw for data centers. Just, everyone's talking about it, but it's a matter of who's doing it.
Yeah, and well, another thing with with water, I don't know if you know, we might leave water alone and let the Board of Health regulate that.
Yeah, but why? Why even let them do, I mean, if we can make a regulation that says no water cooled data centers, that's to our advantage. Not, I mean, I'm not disrespecting what the Board of Health could bring, but the fact is we don't have public water access here. We have aquifers and wells. And so why even allow a company to come in with a 5,000 square foot facility and use water when there are?
I would couch, no consumptive water use,
Yes, yeah.
Right,
If it's
yeah,
a
I mean,
system,
other
well,
than,
that's
you
why,
know,
that's what I'm getting at, right? You know, so if the Board of Health is gonna go and I don't know if they're gonna do data center specific or, you know, just kind of, come up with, you know, non-residential water use. I mean, I know what, we said over 10,000 gallons a day or a month, whatever it was, it goes to Mass DEP, right? Obviously, but the Board of Health can preclude that with their regulation. They can come up with something that would not be just applicable to, it would be applicable to any kind of non-residential use, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I would think though, Nathan, that speaks to the coordination. And I think it's a
right,
both.
yeah, exactly.
It's a both and. I mean, because there's less of them, and they're usually dealing with like septic systems and wells. So
Yeah.
we're really oriented to the zone. I mean, we do zoning. So I think to Steve's point, like we should definitely think about, I like the consumptive water use. That's a good term. So I took a note of that.
So here's what I'm getting at, right? So if Board of Health does regs and if a company, you know, they go to the Board of Health and they say, I want a permit to do a non-residential well. And, you know, I want to draw however much water is permitted under the Board of Health regulations. You know, maybe they're doing something, you know, say light industry, right? You know, they can do whatever, right? If they're not exceeding the Board of Health regulations on that, then it should be good. If they can use, I mean, I don't know how many gallons of water does a normal residential house use? A
couple
day?
hundred, probably a couple
Oh.
hundred gallons a day, give or
Real,
take.
yeah.
For a
So-
family of four, maybe.
Okay, so if, I mean, it's hard to imagine doing anything with a couple hundred gallons a day for a data center, but if someone comes and says that's what they're gonna use in their cooling system, I mean, you know, why prohibit that? If it's just a couple hundred gallons, a day, and
because
that's what the house uses.
there are other cost-effective solutions to the same kind of cooling that don't cost the company any more money. That's why.
Well, I mean,
This is where we were kind of talking, we don't know until somebody were to bring us something with some technology and say, this is what we need or want. And we can't, I mean, we're just kind of spitballing here. I just say, you know, some language that either no consumptive water use, groundwater use, or, you know, have some sort of groundwater study saying that they can, I mean, if they drill down 2,000 feet and find tons of water, that's way below anything we're going to be drawing on. Have at it if that's where you want to go to get your water. Again, and does Board of Health regulate quantities of water, or is it just you know, bacteria, spacing, stuff like that?
Don't
I mean, I
know.
would, yeah, yeah.
I was.
We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch with them a while. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
should kind of talk to them. Obviously, like, I mean, look, nobody wants to have a data center that's, you know, draining the aquifer, obviously, okay? I'm just saying that, you know, a blanket prohibition on it is, I think, a little bit far. You know, I mean, obviously we're gonna have the power to say, no, you're not doing that. That's crazy. You're talking about, you know, a 10,000, you know, something, maybe we get, you know, something big comes in or whatever, and you know, they're trying to do an evaporative, you know, you know, where the water gets used a lot is when it gets evaporated into the air, right?
But I would
but-
think, yeah, Nathan, I would think, I mean, I'd rather have a well-designed bylaw, sort of like to, what Keith is saying and Steve is saying, because we have limited, I mean, we're all volunteers and there's only 7 of us. And so like, why would we entertain a proposal and go through the meetings and the discussions and all that kind of stuff for something that we are probably going to reject anyway if it's too big? You know, you want to sort of, I think, in fairness to us and in fairness to them, say, this is the right size and this is the right thing. And if you can sort of deliver it close or within the boundaries, we'll go through the whole dance with you, you know, because it takes energy to sort of, you know, do all this stuff. I mean, I'm sort of assuming that's when that guy called Mateo this summer to find out, you know, like what he got. They're trying to figure out, you know, what are the possibilities. A concrete thing I would suggest is if I develop another version, you know, maybe we just loop in the Board of Health now so they can see what we're thinking. And whether they come to our next meeting or the meeting after that, they're at least oriented to what the discussion is. Because otherwise they enter it flat-footed and they, you know, I'd rather have them be up to speed in terms of the discussion.
Oh, yeah, yeah, share them, you know, share the document with them for sure.
Okay.
You know, I
So
mean, I don't know, like, I say that also just because, I mean, you know, it seems like the Board of Health is, you know, has some vast power to, you know, promulgate regulations on certain things. I see Tom nodding his head, right? So, I mean, they could be the better body to, you know, enforce some of these concerns, frankly. Obviously, I mean, we have a lot of power with zoning, right? But there's a lot, I think might be easier to challenge zoning, right? Yeah, I don't know, don't know if I have my head fully wrapped around all that, but
Tom definitely knows better, because he and I talked about it for Wendell, but Board of Health have like a lot of power.
Definitely.
right. Yeah.
Well,
So,
My fear would be if, again, I've never read what the regs or the underlying enabling laws are for the boards of health. Again, it's always been septic and drinking water wells, but again, I'm not even sure other than certain chemical constituents, what their purview is. But I could also, I wouldn't want them to jeopardize their credibility, I guess. Yeah, again, I don't know that we haven't really articulated this data center health concern yet, other than, you know, possible PFAS contamination. But the groundwater use, to me, is not a public health issue. If they're not putting anything in the groundwater, if they're just withdrawing groundwater, that seems like a different animal than a Board of Health issue.
Well, if the groundwater in the future could end up being needed for a public water supply, then it does become a Board of Health issue. Even if it's not currently used as a public water supply, like if the future could hold,
Okay.
as part of what Wendell argued in their aquifer protection regulation for Board of Health,
Okay.
that, you know, granted now the towns don't use generally, like Wendell or Shutesbury, any well for more than like, you know, one home at a time. But a public water supply, I think, is 20 or 25 users of the water for any day. So like libraries and schools are considered water supplies. And there is the possibility that down the line, depending on how things go, that the town would need to tap into an aquifer to provide a large amount of water to people. And if that were dried up because of an industry in the meantime, that could end up actually becoming a public health concern. I think that's the concern about taking too much water from any one source.
Okay.
I would imagine.
Yeah,
I would imagine it would be a concern if it affected, you know, homeowners' ability to, you know, draw water from their private wells as well. I don't know, maybe not, but I would imagine that would be within the purview of the Board of Health.
Definitely, that too, that comes up with like housing projects.
Yeah, so, yeah, let's table this. You know, I think, you know, Michael, maybe you're gonna do some edits, maybe somebody will do some research. Give it to Michael, you know, we'll leave it at that, roll it around, think about it more. Continue doing research, and we'll just chug along. Now, member updates. Is everyone good?
Before we move on, can I just ask a question, more procedural? I'm just
Sure.
wondering, as far as creating bylaws, it's not like an open meeting issue?
You mean
To,
like, so I'm not, the way
do
we set it
people
up,
ever form committees? Like, are there committees to create a bylaw for data centers that could meet outside of the meeting and work on it?
well,
You
the
want to do, you
challenge,
want to do a subcommittee?
well, the issue with subcommittees is if it's like, we ended up doing this, I don't know, somewhere like 5, 6 years ago, we had this conversation that if two of us work collectively on something, we're a subcommittee or a work group, which means we're a public body, which means you have to comply with open meeting law. So the reason, like I think the second version of the solar bylaw, when I was on the committee, Jeff was tagged. Like, we voted to have Jeff take the lead, and then anyone who wanted to share information with Jeff could, but he was the only one working on it. And so I adopted that role of like, I am the person and therefore not a committee, but
Okay.
people can send stuff. So it's the way of sort of being productive without creating a whole nother cycle of open meeting law.
That's Jeff Lancey, by the way, not Jeff Weston.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that did come up, at one point. There was like some meeting with multiple boards. I remember talking, with, Grace about that and disagreeing vehemently. Because the open meeting law is silent on subcommittees.
Okay.
And there's some decisions about it, which I think Michael has, he can share them with you. Some of it has to do with, if I were to ask for 2 volunteers, then that could be a subcommittee. All right, so, but, if there's communication among, a number of, members of a public body that does not constitute a quorum, then it's, not a deliberation. If it's not a subcommittee.
Right.
Okay.
So like with solar,
Moving
Jeff
forward.
Lacy and I would talk, so like he would be the point person, we would talk, and it was totally fine.
Okay. Okay.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
Will do. Okay.
Well, I'm happy to help if
Great,
if open meeting law allows it.
totally. I welcome all the input because I think,
And, if
don't know.
anybody, I'll just say this though, if, anybody does want to, get together, I mean, I think, we can call it a subcommittee at any time and just, we'll post it under the planning board and say it's a bylaw working group, call it a bylaw working group subcommittee, and you just post it and, record it, do minutes for it, and it's fine. If you want to do that, because I mean, that could be useful. You could go to town hall, and sit there, and do it that way if you wanted to get together.
Yeah.
You can do it, I mean, maybe if there's 4 of you that want to do it, but, if anyone has things that they want to share with Michael or anyone for that, that's okay. That's not a violation of open meeting law.
And that can be done using our planning board email. Like, I can email Michael from my email,
Right.
planning board email, to his planning board email. If I did some research and wanted to share it with you, would I email
Yeah.
the whole board?
no, just one-to-one.
Okay.
I mean, if it's like if it's a lit document, like
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, if you find like an article or something,
That's
I
okay.
think you can share.
Yeah, I think it's better to share with everybody because
Yeah,
then it
yeah.
raises up our collective understanding.
Right.
Just don't express an opinion on it.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, so I think we're good there. Member updates. I know, Keith was at the, meeting yesterday with the, FinCom. You like to speak on that a little bit, Keith?
Yeah, so yes, I think we all got copied on the email about FinCom was calling an all department, all board meeting to discuss the pending fiscal situation come, I think, they're saying it's gonna really hit Shutesbury, FY 27. And it's basically laying out the hard facts that they've, laid out for us before, and it's going to affect every town in Massachusetts. And it's just the perfect storm of healthcare, labor market, and the fact that we're a rural town with no tax base other than the property owners. So it was they broke us up into groups, the FinCom laid out the landscape of what's coming, and then broke us up into groups and they had some questions for all the groups to tackle. And it's stuff, the ideas that were thrown out are similar to what we've heard before. Is there a way to regionalize some services to save cost? Again, I think what we're going to find is there's not a whole lot of fat left to cut in town budget for the services that we want and appreciate. So they weren't asking for solutions. The FinCom didn't deliberate. They just wanted to hear from the departments and the committees, any ideas or pending, costs that may be unanticipated, but we kind of have an idea they may be coming down the pike. So that was it. It was standby for 2 years that all Massachusetts towns, because state funding has been level or in real dollars, it's been declining over the last 20 years. Our taxes have gone up. They didn't give us a levelized. I wish they'd have done their graphs standardized to inflation, because it showed our taxes going up, but I'm not sure how much they're going up in relation to inflation. I know the state funding and the other source of revenue were pretty much flatlined, but if you were to adjust those for inflation, that would have been a negative. It would have been a declining rate over time. So yeah, that was the gist of it, is that the town is going to have to think through either our value of our services and our employees, town employees, and other revenue streams.
I think we need to put a toll gate on Leverett Road.
Well, I think at town meeting, they suggest handing out more speeding tickets on the, I don't think we get a good reputation doing that. So, yeah.
Nathan, I got a member update question.
Okay.
Have you been in communication with Deacon at all?
Not in a while. Yeah, I've been meaning to give him a call, but I have not. I'll call him in between now and our next meeting. Our next meeting is gonna be the normal second Monday of the month. I think Veterans Day is maybe on a Tuesday or something, so it'll be, let's see,
The 10th, November 10.
Yeah,
sounds right.
cool.
Yeah. Monday, November 10th. I feel like I might have had something for updates. I can't think of what it might have been. But yeah, kind of hearing a little bit of this out of the thing there. I do thinking about economic development, what can be done. I'm worried about the budget. So I don't know, we'll see.
Could be some hard choices. So I'll tell you what I did recommend in my little group was that the town needs to have an honest town-wide discussion on this issue, on development, on is there anything the town would accept that might generate some revenue, any commercial enterprise that might generate revenue and not offend our quote unquote rural character? Because there's oftentimes when anything's proposed, there's almost a knee-jerk response right out of the gate. But I don't know that since that master plan, the work went into the master plan, however many decades ago, that there's been a real town-wide discussion on, the reality of our situation. So.
Food for thought. We'll,
Want to
keep
accept,
our eye
the-
out for them.
want to accept the motion to adjourn?
We don't have any anticipated business, so I was hear a motion to adjourn, yes.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
I think Jeff's got this one.
Yeah.
So, Michael moves and Jeff Weston seconds. To adjourn this meeting. Any discussion? All right, thanks, everyone.
We got to
Have a
vote.
Good evening. I know that. I'm just saying my thank yous now, just so we can vote.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Nathan, for all of your good work. We appreciate it. And everybody.
Yes. Thank you all for volunteering. All right, I will call the roll. Bressler,
Aye.
DeCara,
Aye.
Hasty,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
Seifert,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, and that does it, folks.
Good night, all.
And I.
Thanks. Have a
Good
good
night.
evening.
See ya.
Good night.